Everyone, Matt from Close and Books here. I'm gonna try to record a reading recap. My cats are kind of going crazy right now. Aren't you, pet? First off, before we get started, let's just pay acknowledgements. Let's just acknowledge my New York Knicks. They're on a run right now. I can't get into it or I'm gonna bug out and I'm gonna crash out on camera. I can't do that, but let's go Knicks. We can move on with our lives now. Or you guys can move on with your lives. My life revolves around these next couple of weeks. I don't know if you can hear my cat chirping. Don't scratch up my damn chair. There she is. Say hi, Pep. Hello. And she's so cute. So first off, I know that the name of this reading recap is a bit weighty, you know, maybe a lot of expectations there, but I stand by it. And also it was an amazing reading couple weeks, not because the amount of books I read, but the actual quality of all the books I read have been really just blowing me away. I read some amazing books this past month and a half or so. I think I read, there's Coco. Hey bud, what are you doing? Yeah, I read 3 books these past couple weeks. I'm gonna go through them in the order I read them. I'm just gonna give you my brief thoughts on all of them. So, I mean, as you guys know, you might not know, maybe you've not watched my last video, but as you guys know, I said it again. So you may or may not have known. I just came back from home. I was in New York for 2 or so weeks. It was so great. I miss home so much. My cats are running around. I love my life out here. I love my job. I love, living with my partner, with my cats. I love it, but I really do miss home. And if I could transfer this all back home, I would. Just being back home and, sitting outside, feeling like the ocean air, being back in New York, getting some good food. Yeah, I miss it. I miss it a lot. But the point, I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, I got a lot of reading done back at home because I'd finish up work. Right now I'm kind of like doing some data processing, so I kind of click a button, like write some code, click a button and let it run for a couple hours. So I had some downtime and I did a lot of reading in that downtime. So the first book I finished is kind of a banger, to be honest. It's kind of a book that is so in my wheelhouse. It's so just obviously something I knew I was gonna love. It's been on my TBR for a long time, and that's To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I read this with my buddy Ruben at Readers It May Concern, and we actually did like a buddy read, and we recorded a whole conversation thing. A conversation about it was like 2 hours long. We didn't realize that we recorded it on some website, and we didn't realize that the website needed you to pay to keep the recording, so the recording's lost. He is putting up a thought video onto the Lighthouse, like his own solo thought video on his Patreon. So make sure you go check out his Patreon and give it a follow. Yeah, this book, this book blew me away, man. This book was so good. Second 5-star read of the year. Yeah, it's only 180-ish pages, but don't let that fool you. This is I labored over these pages, man. It is like a stacked 180 page, you see what I'm saying? Every page has just so much writing on it. I labored over these words. I really wanted to make sure I didn't miss a beat in this book, and man, this book is amazing. Virginia Woolf, obviously one of the pioneers of modernism, one of the biggest proponents of modernism, really trying to freshen up the literary landscape at a time that I think this is in the 1920s, right? 1927, yeah. And this book's main thing, and I'm just gonna talk about this quickly, is stream of consciousness, where I've read a bunch of stream of consciousness in my life. It's one of my favorite styles of reading. I know it's a bit contentious, but it's one of my favorite styles. I love just the barriers you can break with it. I love what you can kind of learn from the way humans think and process the world through stream of consciousness. And this is a really, really cool way of doing stream of consciousness, where it's not like you're in, like when you think of like William Faulkner and his stream of consciousness, you're really deeply in the brain of the character, you know. You get all of the inputs, you get these like repeating phrases. It's kind of like they're talking to themselves, you know, these like really neurotic like spirals they go down. You hear every kind of word they speak to themselves, like that voice you hear in your head. You get that. Virginia Woolf's is a little different, where I feel like you're kind of like floating through the air, right? Like you as like the reader are kind of like floating through this like space where everyone's around, and you kind of pick up like radio signals of everyone's thought process. I didn't expect it to be done this way, and I found it to be incredibly immersive. I found it to be like really coherent and natural, like where you'd switch from one person's thoughts to the like, and you kind of just like float on to the next person's thoughts. And there's never a part where I'm like, whoa, like that was a shock, or like that was too much change in a short amount of time. It always felt incredibly natural. Really, like a lot of this book surrounds like a beach house, and like if you've been around the ocean and the beach, you know, like that like flowing air, like it kind of felt like the voices kind of like flowed like that air. You'd go from space to space, or mind to mind rather, really naturally, really seamlessly, completely beautiful. I would say it centers one character, Mrs. Ramsey, who's such an interesting character. I mean, really all the characters in this book are so three-dimensional, which is crazy for how short it is. I found all these characters to be so incredibly complex and developed, and you know, you could sympathize with all of them. You could really like, I guess, relate with all the different characters in different ways. It really revolves around really Mrs. Ramsey's perception of everyone in the house. There's her husband, Mr. Ramsey, who's like an academic, a very accomplished philosopher who's losing steam as he grows older. You get several members of the family, their son James, you know, you have close friends of the family like Lily. It's kind of hard to talk about the plot of this book because it really only you only get action. I say action very loosely. You only get action of like 2 days. A bunch of stuff happens in between, which I won't spoil, but you get like action of 2 days. It's kind of about, well, it's about a lot of things, but I would say the center point of this book is just how Mrs. Ramsey, just her weight as a character that holds this family together. Like she is like the sun, and all the other people in her family kind of orbit around her. You know, she's an incredibly interesting character. She feels a lot of shame and conviction. I feel like she almost has this sort of like suffering as a virtue type mentality. You know, she feels like there's a lot of virtue growing up without money and making it somewhere. She really emphasizes people getting married. Like she thinks people should do things the right way. She really feels for people who are like poor, and I guess people who are disadvantaged in society. But you know, because you get all of the access to her thoughts, like you first get exposed to this, like, oh, she's really like into like social justice almost. But as you read more, it's like, does she really have conviction about these things? Or is it more like she has this shame feeling, like she should be feeling this way, so she does, you know? And then you get this character of Mr. Ramsey, who is this brilliant guy, but he's kind of like wrestling with his brilliance and really, really has a debilitating need to be assured, to have people kind of take care of him and tell him like, yes, you are actually brilliant. He really needs to be liked and admired by other people. And the thing that's interesting, not with just Mr. Ramsey, but everyone in this book, is that everyone is so aware of their flaws. Like they all completely know like what about them annoys other people, but they're just so human that they can't even like help it. Like there's multiple passages in this book where like Mr. Ramsey like knows that like his need to be assured and like gassed up really it gets on everyone else's nerves, and he's really tries to not feel and not act on that feeling. But there are some times where it just gets too intense and he can't help it. And it's funny because it plays off this like this bounce between like, you know, Mrs. Ramsey kind of likes giving him that assurance, even though it annoys her, and how they kind of like work out in a weird way. Really what a lot of this book is telling you is just how complicated it is to be a person, and just like how many conflicting thoughts and feelings you have as a person. But what I think is the main message of this book, well, I can't even say that. One of the messages that stuck out to me, or the most, my cat is fucking with my feet. One of the messages that stuck out to me the most is just that like, you can never really truly know and understand another person. You can never fully have a grasp of what other people think and feel about you, about the earth, about the world, about your friendship, your relationship. That knowledge will never ever securely be grasped by you. Another big theme is that like anything you do that expresses, or like anything that you do holds the weight of your expression. Like you cannot put something out into the earth without tinging it with your expression or yourself. This is a thing for another character named Tansley. He feels the weight of like this social pressure. He knows the people around him don't really like him, so he feels too much pressure to talk, because he knows that his talking, like it needs to reflect like smartness, or it needs to reflect his intelligence or his smartness. There's nothing he can say that doesn't have that tinge of his emotion or his thoughts behind it. So you can never really separate you as a person from the objective reality, or the way you project your reality, the way you project your thoughts and your feelings. You can't really be objective about it. You're always gonna be expressing something about yourself. And just this whole dynamic of people, like people, just how absurdly complicated people's relationships are with each other. Yeah, I mean, like it really struck me, just like you can really love someone, you could really like really know, you feel you know someone, and you know, spend your life with someone, but really you'll never have access to their brain. You'll never have access to the real thoughts and feelings about things, which is, I mean, it's, you know, it feels like that should be like an obvious thing, but you know, you often do get caught up in your own perceptions of how other people think about things. Like, oh, well, they'll do this, or like, oh, they're probably thinking this about me, you know? And you could just be totally wrong. And then it kind of bounces back. It's like, well, if these dynamics are working and you guys are happy, then like how important is it really to understand each other's thoughts? Really amazing book. There's a lot more I could say about this book. Another thing is just like time passing. I got this sense in this book of like a cyclical nature of the universe, right? Like where the world is so, and like this, another character that expresses this really well is Lily, who's a very independent character who resists this pressure that Mrs. Ramsey puts on her to get married. This cyclical nature of the universe where life, the interior life and the exterior world are both so chaotic, you know? Like the exterior world as in the people you interact with, the interior world being your thoughts about yourself and your anxieties and all the thoughts that bounce around in your brain after one of these interactions. you know, or even it could just be nature itself, like rain or hurricanes or, you know, crazy weather. It's all just so explosive and chaotic. She kind of finds solace in these pockets of peace in between them, these pockets of happiness and peace where things are clear. You know, just think about how nice it is when like the rain and it's storming outside, the house is shaking, there's thunder and shit. Something I've been experiencing a lot more now that I live in Nashville. But how nice it is when it stops and like some sun pokes through the clouds. You know, it's like a dark purple outside, but you get this really beautiful orange and yellow light coming through the clouds, you know. Or just like you've been fighting with yourself for like, you're working on something, or you're fighting with yourself, or you have these really doubting and like self-critical feelings about yourself, and then you finally like get one moment of clarity, a moment of repose, and these really tumultuous brain spaces, and just how peaceful it finally feels. Or like that moment where like you will think you're in an argument, or you're in a fight with someone, or like you like someone you love, and then you get that moment of like when it's over, you get that small moment of like tenderness between you two, and just how good that feels. You know, it's like these small pockets of peace are kind of what makes life worth living. And the world, from the external universe to the internal one, is just this cyclical nature of chaos and repose over and over again. So beautiful. It's just an easy 5 stars. I mean, I know I did hardly even fucking talked about the plot or the lighthouse, you know. Okay, last thing I'll say about this is that, again, how this, and I can't really, the ending was amazing. I felt the ending was really good. And Ruben, who I have the utmost respect for as a reader, and he's such a thoughtful and smart guy, but like we had almost like the opposite takeaways from the ending. Like mine, I felt was maybe a little bit more hopeful, and his was a little bit more cynical. You know, I feel like there's this big weight of expectation at the end of the book, like these characters getting to the lighthouse finally, just how we felt those expectations played out, and just the intensities and such complicated relationships between the characters that we almost had the complete opposite reaction to it, or takeaway from it, you know, which I thought was really cool, and just shows you how amazing this book is. So yeah, that's To the Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf. God, what a fucking masterpiece. Seriously, I don't know what else to say about that. Go check out Ruben's Patreon. Hopefully he's uploaded that video or uploads it sometime soon. Okay, that book took me 3 weeks to read. It's 180 pages, right? Like when I tell you I labored over those pages, I meant it. I really did not take a word for granted in that book. And I was craving something a little bit lighter. I finished that book up when I was in New York, and I think I actually finished it on like the plane back from New York or something like that. You know, I was on the move. I was still working and stuff. I spent a lot of time seeing friends and family, being in the city, you know, just being around Long Island. Just, oh man, so good to be back. And I wanted to read something a little bit lighter, a little bit, you know, easier to read. Virginia Woolf is a pretty difficult read. I want to read something a little bit easier, a little bit more nostalgic maybe. So I actually picked up Just Kids by Patti Smith. And this was the perfect book to pick up. This book ended up being like a bit of a comfort book for me. It was like a comfort read, really. Like it was just so easy to pick up and read a couple pages and just let those pages sink in, you know. You know, this book takes place in New York, and I read it outside a whole bunch. I was on the Union Square steps waiting for one of my friends to show up, waiting for her to show up, and I was just sitting on the steps reading this book. It was just like totally an amazing, beautiful experience. Reading this book like while out in the city, like at a coffee shop, and then like going down to like the Strand bookstore, like with this book on my mind, looking for books I've always wanted to find, you know, just so good. I mean, really what this book is it's a love story, a little bit of a romantic love story, but mostly it is just a story of two people who just seemed like they were like meant to have each other in their lives, you know, even when they weren't in a romantic relationship anymore. Like they just were destined to be important for each other, you know. A really beautiful story of love and friendship. I found Patti Smith's writing to be really endearing. You know, it's cool because I spent a lot of time in college, and in high school, growing up around like the Long Island music and arts scene, being in bands and stuff. And, you know, listening to Patti Smith's writing, it just really reminded me of like being around these really smart, creative people, you know, who just have like a beautiful way of expressing themselves, like whether it's through art or whether it's through music. And just like what is amazing is just how like effortless this expression is, just like how effortlessly they can so artfully and so beautifully say something so intelligent, you know. And that's really what I connected to with this book, was just remembering people like that in my life, and just missing them and missing art and music. And yeah, it was just such a nostalgic book, you know. I found like the friendship in this book between Patti and this character Robert to be so, I mean, it was tumultuous, it's crazy, but then you remember these kids are 21 when she is writing about her experiences in this book, and it just reminds you of being a stupid 21-year-old doing stupid shit, having weird friendships, weird crazy relationships, you know. And oh man, and like especially it being so much in New York, it was just so nostalgic. I really enjoyed Patti Smith's growth as an artist through this book, and she has some excerpts of her poetry in here, which I thought were great. You know, her poetry. I've listened to Patti Smith's music. No offense, Patti, if you ever see this, but you won't. It doesn't really do much for me. You know, I appreciate it for what it is and kind of like its influence, but it doesn't really do it for me personally. But, you know, I actually found her poetry to be really interesting and really compelling, especially, funnily enough, like her drafts, like her poetry drafts just seem to be a little bit more unhinged and a little bit more expressive. And that's kind of what I gravitated towards rather than her like finished products, to be honest. What I really took away from this book is just how amazing and how important art is, you know. Yeah, I mean, important as like, sure, a societal thing. Of course it's super important as a societal thing, but like on an individual basis, just like how important art is for expressing yourself, or how important it is for connecting to other people. It makes me want to get back into, like when I was in high school and college, I wrote a lot of poetry, wrote a lot of music. You know, I would draw a lot, and you know, I haven't been doing that. You know, and this book really made me want to do that again. You know, so it was just a really beautiful read, and I mean, it was like a really nice experience. I gave this like 3.5 stars. At the end of the day, like, which is a good rating. Anything for me above like a 3 is like really good. I felt like the writing style, it got on my nerves a little bit sometimes, to be honest. She does this thing where she is constantly name dropping, which is fine. You know, it's a memoir. That's kind of what it's about. It's name dropping people you knew or people you grew up with. But there's all this stuff where she talks about Bob Dylan so much, and she's always like, we talked till 2 a.m. and we discussed everything from Picasso to Proust, you know what I mean? Like there's so many moments where it's like, we discussed from blank to blank, everything from blank to blank. You know, and I understand that these artistic influences are like really important for her. But you know, it got a little tiring by the end. There's also a really interesting phenomenon in this book, I feel like, where Patti Smith, there's a bit of a disconnect between her retelling of the story and her voice as like a character in the story. Like her reflections on this whole experience, her whole life, are very thoughtful. They seem very quiet. They seem very pensive. I wouldn't say quiet, but they do seem very pensive. You know, it kind of, when you read this book, you get the feeling that she's a bit of like an introvert, or a bit of like a, you know, she's a bit reserved. But every time she actually has like a line of dialogue in this book, it's like pretty daring. It's like pretty like sassy even at times, you know what I mean? And that was kind of surprising. It just makes me wonder like how much I missed on like her as a character, because it's very outwardly focused. You learn a lot about Robert and like all these other characters living in this Chelsea hotel, but like you don't hear a lot from her specifically. I mean, you get a lot of her experiences and her perceptions, but like her speaking as a character, it's kind of few and far between. And when she does these like really crazy art exhibitions, or she like will do a poetry reading and like have some guy on the guitar emulating like a car crash, which is like pretty cool, you know. You're reading it and you're like, oh, I didn't realize poetry was that important to her, you know, because she is more outwardly focused to like everyone else's art exhibitions, especially Robert. I mean, I thought this book was great. I would recommend this book so much, especially if you are from New York and you have like ties to that art scene. And I ended up walking down, I went to the Robert Moses Lighthouse, and I did the path that walked down to the lighthouse. It was like 2 p.m. on like a Wednesday, so it was completely empty. I was the only one there, and I was reading this book, sitting next to the lighthouse, and it was just, peak experience. So yeah, Just Kids, Patti Smith, great book, pick it up. Okay, the last book, I don't even know where to begin with this one. The last day before I left New York, I went to another bookstore, and I was like, I would like to pick up something a little bit shorter that I can read on the plane, you know, whatever. And I was in a bookstore, and a book caught my eye that a lot of you all have recommended to me, especially my Brazilian viewers. So thanks so much to you guys. I picked up Água Viva by Clarice Lispector. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin with this book. Oh man. Okay, what I'll say is, if you pick up this version, read the introduction. The introduction is really, really good. It talks about how this book is like 85 pages or something like that. But it is like, this is Clarice Lispector's like most labored over book. She rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it, cut it down from like 200 pages to like 60 pages, buffed it up to 80 or something like that. Like, so she really put a lot of effort and a lot of thought into this book. And I am so glad I read that, because I was going to just kind of breeze through it, but I was like, you know, if, you know, Clarice Lispector took many years to write this 80-page book, let me approach it with some responsibility. And I ended up really, just like To the Lighthouse, laboring over these pages, reading. I could only really read 6 to 10 pages a day, but man, this book is incredible, bro. Like, unlike anything else I've ever read, this book is unbelievable. It took me by surprise in a way I never thought. Like, this made me reconnect with like my roots as a reader. Like, I love the weird shit. I love the experimental stuff. And like, I feel like reading To the Lighthouse before this book was really great, because like, it is pretty experimental and pretty novel for its time, but this is like a trip. There's no plot to this book. This book is about a woman kind of just thinking. And it is, it sounds stupid. And there's so many times where like, I feel like this book, you could just read it and be like, this is nonsense, but it is not. I'm having a hard time talking about it. Like, let me just read you the first paragraph. It's with such profound happiness Such a hallelujah. Hallelujah, I shout, hallelujah, merging with the darkest human howl of pain, of separation, but a shout of diabolic joy. Because no one can hold me back now. I can still reason. I studied mathematics, which is the madness of reason, but now I want the plasma. I want to eat straight from the placenta. I am a little scared of surrendering completely because the next instant is the unknown. The next instant, do I make it or does it make itself? We make it together with our breath and with the flare of the bullfighter in the ring. What the like, how sick is that? I mean, you can see just, I don't know, like, I did not let a word go. I feel like this book, I mean, this is a book I'm gonna have to reread and reread and reread. And I don't know if there is a consensus on like what this book is like about per se, but this is my interpretation. This book is about a woman who is laboring over and is obsessed with capturing the instant, what she calls the instant now. What does that mean, right? Like capturing the very feeling you feel, the very thoughts you have from instant to instant. Like the instant that just passed is gone now. You can never get it back. As these instants go on and on, you can't capture them. You can't hold on to them. You'll never feel them or experience them again. So they just flow on forever and ever, and you'll never ever be able to capture or re-experience them ever again. She's really she's really preoccupied with this idea of living or experiencing without perception, not interpreting anything that comes at you, and just living life in its most pure and untampered form by your own thoughts and experiences, you know, because the moment you recall a memory, you have to recall that memory with your own brain, meaning that you are already tampering that memory and that instant is already immediately gone forever. And that really stresses her out. I think this woman is really preoccupied with death. I think she has this thing where every time she thinks about her beating heart, she starts to get really existential and really fills with dread, you know, because those hearts kind of signify these instants passing and her getting closer and closer to death every day. And she's like, what does life mean and why do we die? And this book is totally within her head. You don't really hear any of the actions she takes. You know, time is passing, because sometimes she'll be like, it's the morning now. Sometimes she'll be like, I need to take a break from writing, so I'll be right back. And then the next paragraph will be like, I'm back. You know, it's really crazy and experimental and just really ambitious. So this woman is preoccupied with capturing instants as they go, moment by moment. And she starts to feel this dread where she can't get them. Like, she can't get there. She's like, I'm gonna try to write down these words completely free-flowing with no interpretation at all and let life flow through me. And she can only do it for a couple sentences before she gets back into like dread again. Just showing you how hard it is to be present in the moment and to live without interpretation. And that's kind of, you know, and then she starts to realize that that's kind of what being a human being is kind of being tortured and like murdered by your own interpretations and anxieties about the world, you know. And this sets her in like so much dread. And it feels like the way I kind of see it is like she feels like she doesn't belong because she's so tortured by these thoughts and feelings, you know, that she starts to envy like animals and flowers, like these beings that live with no consciousness or interpretation at all. They live in these endless stacking of moments and instants, but all these instants are kind of the same to them, you know? So she starts to really envy them and maybe feel like, oh, maybe my place is with them because like that's how I want to live. And it's funny, like even though there's no plot, it feels like this character kind of goes through a character arc. Like when she realizes that it's like this is like what being a human being is. It's this constant chaos, and you cannot separate your feelings and your interpretations from life. You'll never be able to fully like communicate what you felt in that instant, whether it's through art or words or painting or whatever. That feeling you have will never be fully communicated to anyone ever. And then she realizes it's kind of like reciprocal. Nobody can ever communicate to her their feelings. It's kind of like she starts to take a little bit of solace in that. This weakness of like humanity, consciousness, and this inability to express or even experience without human interpretation as like a weakness. She kind of comes around at the end and says, but I denounce our weakness. I denounce the maddening horror of dying, and I respond to all this infamy with exactly this that now will be written, and I respond to all this infamy with joy, purest and lightest joy. And then it goes later, I am, despite everything, I am being joyful in this instant now that passes if I don't capture it in words. She starts to realize that just experiencing it is a miracle, and it is enough on its own. Experiencing the instants as they are, the chaos, the tumult of being a person is enough as it is. It's kind of unifying that everyone else is going through it together, And it's funny that like this kind of like does a nice little circle with the Virginia Woolf book, to the Lighthouse, where I felt like a lot of To the Lighthouse was like this unable to really express. You'll never know what's inside another person's head. This book is kind of the opposite, where like I'll never be able to express what's truly in my head, So it has this kind of nice back and forth, a kind of nice little circle. God, this is like, this book is like, if this doesn't make the top 5 of the year, I'm calling it now. That would be one of the biggest upsets ever. Almost the biggest upset ever. 2-0 over Boston. Let's go. Okay. I've been recording for an hour. Oh no, I'm gonna have to do a lot of editing. Yeah, I got a couple of videos coming up for you guys. I think the next one either gonna be a big old book haul. Some of my favorite channels are kind of participating in right now. Because I bought an irresponsible amount of books in New York. I'm not gonna lie to you. You can probably see some of them on my shelf now if you were being extra astute. One after that will be a reflection upon my first year and a half of BookTube. It's gonna be a good old-fashioned book tag. We haven't done one of those in a while. So anyway, I love you guys. If you're still here, let me know. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. If you've read any of these books, here they are again. Please drop a comment. Let me know if you've read these books, if you think I'm wrong, if you resonate with what I'm saying. I would love to hear what your perceptions are of Agua Viva, because it's just so all over the place. And I will definitely be reading more of the Spectre. Again, thank you so much to my Brazilian viewers for sounding off in the comments, letting me know I have to read her. So, I'll see you guys soon, and go Knicks.